Chapter 2. Men of Color, to Arms! From the start of the war, like other abolitionists in and out of government, Frederick Douglass bellowed for President Lincoln to let black men fight in the U.S. Army. "The national edifice is on fire," Douglass fumed in the September 1861 issue of his newspaper, Douglass's Monthly. "Every man who can carry a bucket of water or remove a brick is wanted. But those who have the care of the building, having a profound respect for the feeling of the national burglars who set the building on fire, are determined that the flames shall only be extinguished by white hands. Such is the pride, the stupid prejudice, and folly that rules the hour." When black men were allowed to enlist, Douglass, based in Rochester, New York, leaped at the chance to serve as a recruiter. 2 of his sons were among the first recruits. His oldest, Lewis, joined the first official black regiment raised in the North, the 54th Massachusetts Infantry. So did his youngest, Charles, but he later transferred to the 5th Massachusetts Cavalry. Middle son, Frederick Jr., was a recruiter like his father. "Men of color, to arms!" was Frederick Douglass's cry, as he traveled the North urging black men to rally around the Stars and Stripes, to fight for God and country, to fight for the liberation of their people, to prove that African Americans, freeborn and freed alike, were fit for citizenship, to blast to smithereens the notion that, as Confederate President Jefferson Davis said, people of African descent were a class of people not fit to govern themselves. And fight black men did. With bayonet, musket, and bowie knife, with their abilities at cooking, carpentry, blacksmithing, and piloting gunboats, with their might and muscle at digging trenches and digging graves, as drummer boys, chaplains, and physicians. Black men and boys fought hard and with valor. They fought despite discrimination within the Union Army, where initially there were no black commissioned officers and black soldiers received less pay than white soldiers. Now the main question is, are we soldiers or are we laborers? We are fully armed and equipped, have done all the various duties pertaining to a soldier's life, have conducted ourselves to the complete satisfaction of general officers. Why can't we have a soldier's pay? Corporal James Henry Gooding, a freeborn member of the 54th Massachusetts, in a September 28, 1863, letter to Abraham Lincoln. The Battle of Milliken's Bend, in Madison Parish, Louisiana, in June 1863. The assault on Fort Wagner on South Carolina's Morris Island, in July 1863. The Battle of Fort Pillow, near Memphis, Tennessee, in April 1864. The Battle of Nashville, Tennessee, in December 1864, the 9-month siege of Petersburg, Virginia, June 9, 1864, through March 25, 1865. Black soldiers fought in minor battles, in major battles. And the bold Harry Jarvis was in that number. Yes, in the end, he got his wish to be allowed to fight. After nearly 2 years abroad, Jarvis returned to the U.S. on a ship that docked at Boston Harbor in the spring of 1863. By the end of the year, he enlisted in the 55th Massachusetts Infantry Regiment. In late November 1864, Jarvis almost lost his life in battle in South Carolina. "There I was, wounded 3 times, first in this arm, but I kept on fighting till a musket ball struck my right leg and I fell. I was struck once more in the same leg, and I lay on the field all night." Sadly, Jarvis lost that leg. Along with Harry Jarvis and Prince Rivers among the Union's gallant black men was Wyatt Outlaw, born into slavery in Alamance County, North Carolina. During the war, Wyatt Outlaw was pressed into service building Confederate fortifications near Petersburg, Virginia. He managed to escape and made his way to Freedom's Fortress. Outlaw then joined the 2nd Regiment U.S. Colored Cavalry, which primarily saw action in Virginia. There was also Robert Smalls, born into slavery in Beaufort, South Carolina. Early on in the war, Smalls was compelled to serve as head crewman of the Planter, a Confederate gunboat. But this man was far from content to do his master's bidding. He was ever on the lookout for a chance to escape. In the early hours of May 13, 1862, with the planter's white officers ashore, 23-year-old Smalls, dressed like a rebel captain, deftly steered the steam-powered side-wheeler out of Charleston Harbor past several Confederate checkpoints and into Union waters. 6 black crewmen were with Smalls when he commandeered the planter. At the start of their perilous journey to freedom, Smalls stopped at a wharf to pick up his wife, their 2 children, and a few other family members and friends. 17 people were on board when the planter made its break for freedom. When Smalls delivered the planter to Union officials, he handed them quite a prize. On board was a 24-pound howitzer and a 32-pound rifle gun, among other weaponry, and a book of signals and codes. Robert Smalls went on to pilot vessels, including an ironclad, for both the U.S. Navy and the U.S. Army. Christian Fleetwood was yet another black braveheart in Union blue. Born free in Baltimore, this graduate of Pennsylvania's Ashman Institute, today's Lincoln University, joined the 4th Regiment United States Colored Infantry at the age of 23, and quickly rose to the rank of Sergeant Major. And Christian Fleetwood knew glory. In the September 29th, 30th, 1864 Battle of New Market Heights, near Richmond, Virginia, Fleetwood rescued his regiment's flags after bullets felled both color bearers. "First night's sleep since 27th," he scribbled in his diary on September 30th. Fleetwood and 13 of his black comrades would receive the Medal of Honor for their valor at New Market Heights. "We are in winter quarters at City Point, Virginia, now, doing provost duty, which is quite agreeable after our summer campaign, which has been quite severe on us at some times. I have a splendid little house to myself with a fireplace in it. Only the recollection of home associations comes forcible to memory, then I feel a little downhearted, but soon rally when I think on what principle I am fighting, which is for the benefit of my race." Morgan W. Carter, in a December 3, 1864 letter to a friend. Carter, a sergeant in the 28th United States Colored Infantry, was the son of Underground Railroad worker John Carter, a successful grocer in Madison, Indiana. Kendrick Allen, Solomon C. Banks, George William Commodore, George Dorsey, Toby Ellis, James Forge, Simon Grant, Henry Hancock, Albert Irvin, Zach Geroy, Wesley King, Michael Leary, Octavius McFarland, the brothers John and Isaiah Owens, Spotswood Rice, Charles Stokes, James Monroe Trotter, Charles Vast, William Wright, Daniel T. Young, Charles Zimmons, and 7 members of my family served in the U.S. colored troops during the war. When on April 9, 1865, Palm Sunday, near Appomattox Courthouse, Virginia, the Confederacy's top general, Robert E. Lee, surrendered the Army of Northern Virginia to the U.S. commander Ulysses S. Grant, the dawn of the Civil War's end, nearly 180,000 black men, more than half Southerners, had served in the Union's Army, 10% of the force, and 19,000 in its Navy, 20% of that force. Close to 40,000 died, 3/4 from disease. Unheralded were the throngs of black people who had attached themselves to Union forces for freedom's sake. Men and women, children too, who had cooked for Union troops, cleaned, groomed horses, polished boots, did laundry, and served as teamsters, messengers, and guides for scouting parties and expeditions. Many provided information about Confederate troop movements and other valuable intelligence. If nothing else, in taking their liberty, they deprived the Confederacy of their labor and sale price. Also by war's end, 3 border states had come to see slavery as a lost cause and abolished it. Maryland on November 1, 1864, Missouri on January 11, 1865, and West Virginia, a state since June 20, 1863, on February 3, 1865. The border states of Delaware and Kentucky stubbornly clung to slavery. After Appomattox, after more than 10,000 skirmishes and major battles, after the death of roughly 750,000 Americans, after the wounding of countless people in and out of uniform, after areas of the South lay in wreck and ruin, after nearly 4 million black men and women, girls and boys, about 10% of the nation's population, 90% of its black population, and about one-third of the South's inhabitants, were initially freed by flight, by legislation, and by a presidential proclamation, and ultimately by the 13th Amendment to the Constitution. After so many black souls across the years had been slapped, kicked, bludgeoned, whipped, pummeled, paddled, raped, mutilated, branded, hamstrung, shot, stabbed, wrenched from family? After more than 200 years of stolen labor? After all that, what now? How could the nation heal, reunite, do right by the freed men and women? Could the motto, E pluribus unum, Latin for out of many, one, have a deeper meaning beyond the relationship between the states and the federal government? Reconstruction, the process of remaking America, was underway. Women warriors. Elizabeth Bowser, circa 1839 to we're not sure. Freed as a child by the wealthy Van Loo family of Richmond, Virginia, and later sent north to be educated, Elizabeth Bowser was a member of a spy ring organized by Elizabeth Van Loo. This Union loyalist got the young black woman work as a servant in the Confederate White House, not far from the Van Loo mansion. In 1995, Bowser was inducted into the Military Intelligence Corps Hall of Fame for the valuable intelligence she gathered by listening to conversations, perusing documents, and by other means as she did domestic work. All the while, Bowser pretended to be slow-witted. Charlotte Forten, 1837 to 1914. This member of a prominent Philadelphia family was at the January 1, 1863 Emancipation Day celebration in Port Royal. She had arrived in the area months earlier to take part in the Port Royal experiment, an effort to aid roughly 10,000 black people on the Union-occupied South Carolina Sea Islands who were living on cotton plantations abandoned by their owners. To prove that ex-slaves could function in freedom, Northerners like Forten went to the islands to help their inhabitants build schools and hospitals and acquire other necessaries. In October 1862, Charlotte Forten arrived on St. Helena, home to 50 plantations. She taught at the island's Penn School, founded by white reformer Laura Town. In the spring of 1864, the Atlantic Monthly published Forten's two-part article, Life on the Sea Islands. Susie Baker King Taylor, 1848 to 1912. At age 14, Susie Baker was running a school for her people on Union-occupied St. Simon's Island, Georgia. By day, she taught children. By night, adults. After she married her first husband, Sergeant Edward King, a member of the 1st South Carolina Volunteers, redesignated the 33rd U.S. Colored Troops in 1864, she traveled with the regiment, serving as a laundress and nurse and teaching soldiers to read and write. Born into slavery on Georgia's Isle of Wight, at a young age, Susie was allowed to live with a grandmother in Savannah, where she attended clandestine schools. Not long after she was sent back to the Isle of Wight, Union forces took Fort Pulaski on nearby St. Simon's. Along with other family members and neighbors, Baker made a beeline for St. Simon's. Harriet Tubman, circa 1820 to 1913. This legendary Underground Railroad conductor served as a cook, spy, and scout for the 1st South Carolina Colored Infantry. In the spring of 1863, while working as a scout for the 2nd South Carolina Volunteers, Tubman engaged in intelligence gathering on Combahee Ferry, South Carolina, and environs, creating a spy ring along the way. What Tubman learned was critical to the regiment's successful raid of area rice plantations. It resulted in the liberation of roughly 800 black adults and children. Born Araminta Ross, Harriet Tubman was in her 20s when she escaped slavery in Dorchester, Maryland, in the fall of 1849. Her heroism before and during the war is truly remarkable, especially given the seizures she suffered, the result of a childhood head injury. Chapter 3.